Good morning, everybody. My name is Lasse Seppanen. I've worked on games for almost 20 years now. Started with text message games as a designer and programmer. And yeah, you can imagine that the fidelity of those games was not quite what you can do on a phone right now. 2003, 2005, I was part of the second wave of mobile from my perspective. We had Java code running on the phones, color screens, real-time games, so we could make car games, platformers, and so on. And I was working with the future founders of Supercell, basically, in their previous studio as head of studio. Built that studio. We sold it to Americans in 2004. So Trip Hawkins, the founder of EA, acquired us. We were rebranded Digital Chocolate, and then I kind of called the siren call of AAA. So couldn't resist going there. The guys had finished Max Payne 2. They wanted to take the leap to the next generation of consoles in 2005. And I spent 6 years in AAA, shipped a game called Alan Wake. Maybe some of you have seen that game. We had $20 million budget from Microsoft to make something unique, and unique we did. I was the executive producer and chief operating officer at the company. I guess there's a little bit of problem. Yeah, no problem. I can just keep talking random stuff here.
Yeah, we might have to go to font B, go to the text.
That's fine. It's just a few fonts here or there. Yeah, you can just switch to that if it works better. Anyway, so after AAA, 2011, I left, did a bit of consulting, and then 2013, we founded this company, which is PlayRaven. And yeah, today I'm going to talk about our learnings of how to develop metagames, because we made a lot of mistakes, and the problem is not making the mistakes. The problem would be if you don't learn from the mistakes. I'm going to share some of our learnings here today. Clicker.
Yeah.
And maybe go back to the first slide. Try again. Cool, here we are. So this is the team today. We're based in Helsinki, Finland. Very international, so we have 7 nationalities. Exactly 50% of our staff are Finns, and the other half is picked from all over the world. And we're actively recruiting like professionals from all the continents. We have South Americans, North Americans, Europeans, and so on, people who have spent many years in China, averaging about 10 years of experience per person in the games industry. And the special thing about PlayRaven is that we always focus on fresh experiences. If you played Alan Wake, for instance, you understand that that's a fresh experience. It was not a military shooter set in Baghdad or anything like that. It was something completely unique and still remembered today. And this is a way of positioning yourself outside of the competition that is very cutthroat. So the goldfish bowl is kind of a metaphor for me, because this market, during my 20 years in the industry, this market, the App Store and Google Play, is the most competitive market I've ever seen. Very, very cutthroat, but at the same time, it seems to be very competitive in pockets. So if you make a match 3 game, or if you make a RPG game, or if you make a village builder, you know, you face stiff competition. And then something fresh comes along every now and then. So Pokemon Go is fresh. Clash Royale, totally fresh. And so it's a way of putting yourself outside of the competition, but the trick is how do you do it so that it's still relevant to the mainstream audiences. So it's very important we take inspiration from others. I'm sorry for some of the font problems we have here, so some of the texts are a little bit cut off, but we'll manage. So it should say take inspiration from others, but never copy or clone. So we don't take a template of a game and then just reskin it to a theme, like spying or something. We have to have a bold attitude, like the great explorers had back in the day. 3 games launched. I want to get to the topic because it's a quick session. We've had fairly good success with the games. So all of them have been very high on the strategy charts. Especially happy about Robocide in the middle, so we hit #1 for the first time in the US with that game when we launched it, and also the reviews were just stellar. It had over 60% D1 retention and so on. But today I'm going to talk about Winter State, which was not as successful, and some of the learnings we have from that game. Before I go into that, just reviewing quickly what we have in development right now. So we have multiple teams, and this is important for you to understand when we talk about our development, that we have multiple teams, and the teams are relatively autonomous, and they have different skills, competencies. So there's one team working on a new Spymaster game. There's another team working on a top secret thing, which is a major games IP, which all of you would know, but unfortunately I can't tell what it is. But we partnered up with a bigger games company here. And team 3 is under construction, so we are actively hiring right now for a third team. We're growing this year. So, coming to the topic of metagame first. So what is the opposite of putting metagame first? For us, it is putting second-to-second gameplay first. And this is kind of what happened with Winter State. We didn't mean it to happen, but if you are a developer, how many are developers, by the way? Yeah, so you know how it is. I mean, day to day you work in development, you iterate, and you have to make decisions about what are we going to focus on this week, what are we going to focus on during this sprint. And it's easy to say we have to prioritize everything. We've got to make sure this is in top shape, this is in top shape, that's in top shape. But then the reality is you kind of end up doing something and ignoring something else. And if you're not conscious about it, it might go a little bit wrong. So the goal setting for Winter State was, let's make a game inspired by PC RTS. The team, like I said, semi-autonomous. So they come and pitch that they want to make a game that is kind of like an RTS, but completely designed for phone. It's not a port, it's for phones. Think about it, not pads, not tablets, but for phones. So how is that done? And then come up with a fresh theme, you know, post-climate change, lots of snow and ice and so on. Kind of Mad Max meets Day After Tomorrow, if that makes sense. It sounded pretty cool. Let's make a few prototypes. Let's see if it's fun. And it was fun, no doubt about it, when we tried it. But just saying a few more words about the game itself. So there was a large, like a world map. This is the east coast of United States. After the climate change hits, the Atlantic Ocean is pretty much frozen up. And yeah, you can pick up missions, you can trade between the cities, you have PvP, like the yellow things there are PvP, and there's like a bunch of things you can do. And that's the metagame layer of the game. And there was like a huge scope. Now looking at it retrospectively, there was a huge scope to the game. So all that and a very ambitious second-to-second gameplay on par with the best. So if we look at what you actually do during the combat, so when you click on some mission on the world map, you go into this combat view, which is, you know, full 3D, real-time 3D, and you can pan it and so on. So what they first focused on is how do you move the units, because in a PC RTS you would be drawing a lot of rectangles with your mouse, and that's like really bad way for a cell phone game. So drawing was something that was natural on a touchscreen phone. Makes sense, right? Yeah. So they spend a lot of time on that smooth drawing thing. And then things like, you know, you draw here and then you take a finger off and then you put your finger back there and you can continue smoothly, like seamlessly from what you've drawn before. There were also like a lot of other features. Is this working? Like, okay, so we don't want to give firing orders, so we have to have auto-engage. When you come to a certain range with the enemy, the units start firing automatically. Okay, so how far is the firing range? Does it differ for different units? If I have an artillery, is there a different auto-engage range and so on? All these things take time. If you're a developer in the audience, you know that it takes a lot of time to figure these things out so that they feel exactly right. There's energy you can collect there. This energy you can use for the special abilities here, which you then manually trigger, and then getting the right flow and the timers, you know, how long is a match. We limited it to 3 minutes, but we of course iterated with 4 minutes and 5 minutes and whatever. And we limited the amount of vehicles you have, but what is the right amount? 5 vehicles, 3 vehicles, 4 vehicles? What can you handle on a phone? You have to try all these things. It takes a lot of time. And finally, a very, very nice thing, if you're playing on a phone, you really want to pause it. If you are, you know, you gotta do something else. You're in the middle of traffic or whatever. But then fancy things like bullet time. So when you put your finger on a vehicle, everything slows down. Everything's slowly moving, but you can give your orders and draw your paths and so on. It's wonderful, wonderful, very fun gameplay. And we tested it a lot. We use Playtest Cloud as our main sort of UX testing because it's so convenient, and we can use Americans like overnight testing. And we got high scores for this gameplay. So that leads you to think, okay, we're doing the right thing. Hey, the game is working great, right? Just a few more words about what happened in the game. So, of course, there were different mission types, just to give you an idea of the scope then, because all those nice things are now done. So what is the scope of this combat? There's different mission types, so you can see the HQ label there. So sometimes you're defending an HQ, sometimes it's like a meeting encounter and so on. There's a ton of gorgeous visual effects, so you can see the missiles flying there, there's particles, there's smoke. You can pause, you can pan, you can see the missiles in the air. It's all beautiful, real-time 3D. And finally then, the amount of maps in the game. Because if you stare at one beautiful map for 100 hours, it's not gonna, you know, you're not gonna feel it anymore after 10 hours or 5 hours or whatever. So there were 13 unique combat maps, but we also built a system where we can do variations on the map. So you can rotate it, for instance, and this time you're coming from this edge of the map or whatever. You could change the positions of buildings and whatnot easily from those. So 325 variations. Again, a lot of time and effort spent in this system. First building the system, building the tools, and then designing on top of those tools. And I think there was also a pretty big, like, astounding technical achievement when we finally were able to push the whole game with all this real-time 3D, all these maps, all these vehicles, everything to under 100 megabytes of initial download. So it would download through a cell phone network. And then coming back to the metagame, so metagame, okay, now we have fantastic gameplay, so what can I buy in the game? What can I level up? What can I grind? If I don't want to pay, what can I grind every day? What is my sort of long term? What am I going to do in 6 months or 12 months or 24 months? So vehicles was designated as the main thing that you would be upgrading, of course unlocking, upgrading, leveling up. And we ended up with 15 vehicles. It's not a great inventory. It just reflects, you know, gives an idea that how complex it is when you add a new vehicle. You got to figure out all these things now: firing ranges, movement speeds, how they interact with other vehicles in combat. And because the combat is so second to second, like millisecond precise thing, it takes a lot of time to include, like, add one more vehicle to the mix and make sure it's all balanced and it all works out nicely. We had 10 drivers as well, but that's pretty much it. What you could do, or in the metagame side of sort of as your long-term grinding goals. And of course, now looking back at this, it seems totally insufficient, and we didn't aim for 15 vehicles, obviously. But it's what we ended up having in the game when it launched. So that hopefully gives you an idea of where we made a game that was heavily second-to-second gameplay focused, even though we wanted, of course, it to also have a strong metagame. But we ended up just through sheer scope and kind of the development team's daily focus. You have on the top of your mind, okay, the missiles are not flying correctly. I gotta fix the missiles. The drawing is not as smooth as it should be. I'm gonna fix the drawing. Rather than thinking, okay, I gotta fix this game so that we can design vehicles faster into it, or that there would be more categories of things to sell to the player or grind. So we made a conscious decision last year when we were at the final stretch of Winter State that the next game we're going to make, this was made by a different team, but they were looking at the Winter State guys and thinking, okay, we're not going to make our game like that. We're going to make a game that has a very large inventory of collectibles and has a very rich social metagame. So this would be the unique thing, the unique metagame thing about this game. And no second-to-second gameplay whatsoever. None. So if you take that out of the scope, out of the equation, the team is going to spend 0 time on the second-to-second gameplay, on missiles, on controls, on vehicle tuning, whatever. And let's see how that went. So, has anybody played this game? It's in soft launch in a few countries right now. It's what we refer to as the new Spymaster. So, this is the basic gameplay of Spymaster that we started with. So there's a little map and there's multiple continents, but there's also like just a few cities in every map. And you can unlock more cities. And then when you click on a city, you get this view where you have this sort of a mission. And the only thing you do in a mission is you allocate which agent is going to do which job. And then you press go. And there's timers. So agent allocation and timer, that's your second-to-second gameplay, which skip it totally. You just have a timer. And then we added more modes when we first kind of were happy that, okay, this is like a nice baseline layer, but since you're always waiting for something, what if we add something that is instant? So sometimes you also want to have things that happen immediately. So we added instant raids, but still the same idea. I'm going to pick an agent, something happens, pick an agent, something happens, pick an agent, you lose, you win, kind of a situation. So think of it a little bit like a casino. So if you enter a casino, it's very easy to operate any machine or go to any table and play. You're not diving into a mode where you spend 3 hours learning the game at a casino. The idea is that you have a rich experience because you have so many slot machines, for instance, rather than having one very complex slot machine. So here, this is a very simple fast game mode. The instant raids are very simple fast game mode. And you stay in the metagame all the time as a player. You basically don't leave the metagame. Talk about collectibles. We have over 300 agents, 3 upgrade paths per agent. We soft launched this game with 200 agents after 5 months of development, and we've added 100 more during soft launch. We have 30 cities, 2 upgrade paths, and this creates like a very, very large grinding roadmap for the player. And all the agents are unique as well. Then looking at the social side of things, we have a couple of things that were introduced very, very early in the game. I mean, in development. So, for instance, the chat, very standard thing. I mean, a lot of games have a chat, but it was established very early, so they could move on to the more ambitious social things. Requests and donations, kind of, still a little bit standard thing. But then they started innovating on stuff because we wanted to come up with fresh new things. So rescue missions, if my agent gets captured, you people can see it as a mission in the guild feed. You can join to rescue my agent, and I get my guy back. You get some rewards. We wanted to look at this system of how can my actions create more missions for the other players and content. And another example of this, like an innovation in the metagame side, would be the laboratory. So you don't have your own laboratory. There's a shared guild laboratory that we can together build. But I have my own scientists, so I can then send my scientists to work in the laboratory. So we were able to move really quickly to the features that we really felt that these would be the unique things in the game. And we were able to put them in very quickly, try them out with real users and so on. I'm pretty short on time here, so I'm just going to go to the results now. So comparing these two projects, by putting the metagame first, we were able to create a very rich metagame feature set and iterate very quickly without any burden of, like, you know, everything's interrelated in the second gameplay. The in-app inventory obviously very, very big compared to the Winter State game, so 20 times bigger or so. And we got the soft launch and metrics much, much faster. So Winter State took more than a year to get the soft launch. This one in 5 months. And what does that mean as results? Basically, better everything. So K-factor, for instance, around 0.6, 0.7. Repurchase rate, 60%. So if you make one purchase, 60% make a second purchase, and so on. There was more stuff to buy. It was more interesting stuff. And you could imagine things you will do with the stuff in the metagame side.